My stepmother kicked me out the night my father died. I said nothing about the $28 million he'd been quietly moving into my name for 18 years. Thursday's will reading ended her. My stepmother was waiting in the hallway at the bottom of the stairs, arms crossed, the way she stood when she'd already decided how a conversation was going to go. My father had been dead for 4 hours. "This is my house now," she said. "Pack your things and go." I looked at her for a moment. At the hallway behind her, the one where my childhood photos had once hung on the wall before they migrated to the attic in a box labeled Old Frames. At the closed door of my father's study, where we'd spent Saturday mornings for 18 years, going over numbers together and where, as of this morning, no one would ever go again. I picked up my duffel bag from the bottom step, walked past her without a word. The front door closed behind me. Not a slam. I don't slam doors. My father taught me that the people who slam doors are the people who've run out of better options. In my coat pocket was a key, a commercial key, heavy and specific, the kind that belongs to a building rather than a house. 6 floors, 32 tenants, a downtown address that had gone from marginal to valuable over 18 years, which was exactly what my father had predicted when he bought it. Linda didn't know the building existed. She didn't know about a lot of things. She was about to find out about all of them. My father's name was Douglas Irving, and before I tell you what he built for me, I need to tell you who he was, because the two things are the same story. He was a real estate investor from a mid-sized city in Ohio who had started with one duplex, a library card, and the specific stubbornness of a man who'd grown up without money and decided, quietly and without announcing it to anyone, that the condition would not persist. He drove a truck that was 15 years old when I was growing up, not because he couldn't afford a new one, but because he said the truck still worked, and replacing things that still worked was a form of waste he had no patience for. On Saturday mornings, from the time I was 8 years old, he would put me in the passenger seat of that truck and drive through neighborhoods. "What's that one worth?" He'd point at a house. I'd guess. He'd correct me. Square footage, lot size, comparable sales within a half-mile radius. What the roof looked like and what that meant about what was coming in 5 years. Whether the neighborhood was moving towards something or away from it. By the time I was 12, I could read a mortgage statement faster than most adults. By the time I was 16, he opened a brokerage account in my name and transferred $5,000 into it. Index fund, low expense ratio. He handed me a pocket calculator with a cracked case. I still have it somewhere, and said, "Do your own math, always. Don't mention this to Linda," he said. I looked at him. "Not because it's a secret," he said, "because she worries about anything she can't track on her spreadsheet." I filed that sentence away the way I filed most things my father said, carefully, in a place where I could find it later when it started to make more sense. Linda Irving had been my stepmother for 22 years, which meant she came into the picture when I was 8, which meant she was present for essentially all of my formation as a person, which is a strange thing to say about someone who spent 22 years making clear that I was present on sufferance. She wasn't cruel the way people are cruel in movies. Loud, obvious, cartoonish, she was precise. She worked the way water works on stone, consistently, over time, in ways that are individually small and cumulatively total. My bedroom became Cora's playroom when Cora was born, then a yoga studio when Cora outgrew the playroom. My childhood photos came off the mantle around the time I was 12, first to the hallway, then to the attic, labeled Old Frames in Linda's handwriting, which I know because I found the box when I was 16 looking for something else, and stood in the attic for a while holding a photo of myself at age 6 with my mother, who had been gone for 3 years by then, and felt something I didn't have a name for yet. The family Christmas card said, "The Irving family." A photo of Linda, Douglas, and Cora. 3 people. I was standing right there the December our neighbor Mrs. Keating asked why I wasn't in it. Linda laughed. "Oh, Paige is so busy with school." My father opened his mouth, then closed it, then walked to the garage. That was the year I stopped waiting for anyone to fix it. I was 13. It was a hard year to be 13, but it was also the year I started paying very close attention, which turned out to be the most useful thing I ever did. Here is what I paid attention to. Over 18 years, I paid attention to Linda's bookkeeping, which was meticulous and total. Every grocery receipt, every utility bill. She tracked the household finances on a spreadsheet that was, I'll give her this, genuinely impressive, color-coded by category, monthly variance analysis, a tab for projections. She knew, at any given moment, exactly what she owned and what it was worth. She just didn't know what she didn't know. And what she didn't know was what my father had been doing on Saturday mornings while she did her spreadsheets. He'd bought the commercial building downtown in 2003, when the neighborhood was rough enough that the most optimistic restaurant nearby was a guy selling tacos out of a school bus that was parked more or less permanently on the corner. My father had looked at the bones of the building, at the transit lines, at what was happening 3 blocks over, and done the math that Linda would have flagged as speculative and irresponsible on her spreadsheet. He transferred the building to me in stages over 6 years, filed, notarized, completed under the advice of an estate attorney named Gerald Marsh, who had been my father's attorney for 27 years, and who understood exactly what my father was doing and why, and kept it precisely as quiet as my father asked him to. The index fund I'd started at 16 had grown to $4.2 million by the time my father died. 8 more properties across 3 states, all rental income reinvested, all under my name, total value $28 million. Every dollar of it legally, cleanly, permanently mine. Linda was going to fight over a house worth $380,000. My father's health had been declining for 2 years. Heart disease, the slow, managed kind that changes everything about how you live without announcing exactly when it will end. He'd had a cardiologist named Dr. Vivian Park at Ohio State Medical Center for 4 years. Dr. Park was careful, direct, and told my father in January of the year he died that his next cardiac event was unlikely to be survivable. My father received this information with the equanimity of a man who had already done his planning. He thanked Dr. Park. He called Gerald Marsh from the parking lot of the medical center. He called me that evening. "You know where everything is," he said. "I know," I said. "The building key is on your key ring. Has been for 2 years." "I know, Dad." A pause. The sound of him settling into his chair. I knew the sound of his chair. The specific creak of it. "Mitchell Crane," he said. "Write this down." I wrote it down. Mitchell Crane, Crane and Abrams, Columbus. Estate litigation and asset protection. 15 years in practice. He has copies of everything Gerald filed, my father said, in the event that anyone contests anything. "Dad, I'm not being morbid," he said. "I'm being organized. There's a difference." He died on a Tuesday in March at 7:14 in the morning in the hospital bed that had been in the living room for 6 weeks. I was there. Linda was there. Cora, who was 19 and had driven through the night from Columbus, was there. He died looking at the window, which faced the backyard, where there was a tree he'd planted the year I was born. By 11:30 a.m., Linda had asked me to leave. I drove to a hotel, the Marriott on 5th downtown, 11 blocks from the commercial building, which I hadn't been inside in 2 months, and which was currently running at 91% occupancy, because I had a property manager named Kevin Dalton who knew his job. I checked in. I put my duffel bag on the bed. I sat in the chair by the window and looked at the city for a while. Then I called Mitchell Crane. He answered on the second ring. "I expected your call today," he said. "I'm sorry about your father." "Thank you," I said. "The will reading is Thursday. Linda already asked me to leave the house." "That's consistent with what your father anticipated," Mitchell said. "Do you have reason to believe she's aware of the asset transfers?" "She called me 2 days before he died," I said. "Asked about a building downtown, said she couldn't find anything in his papers." A brief pause. "What did you tell her?" "That everything would be clarified Thursday." "Good." I heard him writing something. "I'll be at the reading Thursday morning. I have certified copies of all transfer documents, the portfolio valuations as of the date of death, and the independent property appraisals Gerald commissioned last fall." Another pause. "Your father was thorough." "He always was," I said. I sat in the hotel room until evening, then ordered room service and ate it at the desk and went to sleep at 9:30 because grief, it turns out, is exhausting in a way that has nothing to do with whether you were surprised by it. My Aunt Maggie called Tuesday morning at 8:47 a.m. Maggie is my father's sister, 7 years younger, a retired high school principal who has been paying close attention to Linda for approximately 22 years and had, on numerous occasions, suggested to my father that he was being too patient. She calls a spade and she calls it fast. No greeting. Just, "Linda withdrew $80,000 from the joint savings account yesterday." I sat up in the hotel bed. "You're sure?" "Arlene at First Federal is my former student. She called me." A pause. "She used the financial power of attorney, the one Douglas signed 2 years ago when he was managing everything from the hospital." I was already reaching for my laptop. The financial power of attorney my father had signed in 2021 had authorized Linda to manage joint accounts on his behalf while he was hospitalized. It was a specific, time-limited document tied to his legal capacity. It expired the moment he died. "Maggie," I said, "what time was the withdrawal?" "Yesterday afternoon, around 3 p.m. My father had died at 7:14 a.m. Tuesday. Linda had waited 8 hours, then used a document that had been legally void for 8 hours to withdraw $80,000 from a joint account. I called Mitchell Crane at 9:02 a.m. He was calm, the way attorneys are calm when they've anticipated something and it has arrived on schedule. "Send me your aunt's contact information and the name of the bank contact," he said. "I'll pull the transaction records today. We'll need to establish the exact time of the withdrawal against the certified time of death." "The funeral costs," I said. "Approximately $8,000 to $10,000 typically," he said, "which means $70,000 unaccounted for," I said. "Print everything page. Every text from Linda since your father's death. Every call log you have." Quick pause. "If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify is linked in the description. I'll handle the financial records." I spent Tuesday afternoon printing things. I had a lot to print. The day before the will reading, Linda called 4 times in 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because I looked at the call log afterward, the way my father had taught me to look at things, specifically with timestamps. The first call I let go to voicemail. Her voice was sweet, controlled, the voice she used for company. "Paige, I know things are tense right now, but I think we should talk before Thursday. There's no reason for this to be difficult." The second call, "I'm not sure what you think you know about your father's assets, but I want to make sure you have accurate information." The third call, 4 minutes after the second, "Paige, there was a building downtown. Your father mentioned it once. I can't find anything in his files, and I just want to make sure it's accounted for properly." The fourth call, silence for 3 seconds, then a hang-up. I set the phone face down and listened to the fourth voicemail notification buzz against the hotel nightstand and felt nothing in particular, which is what happens when you've been watching someone carefully for 22 years and they do exactly what you expected them to do. I called Mitchell. "She knows something's missing," I said. "She just doesn't know what." "That's good," he said. "Uncertainty makes people move too fast." A pause. "Don't call her her back. Don't email. Nothing in writing. See you Thursday. The will reading was in a second-floor conference room above a dentist's office on Broad Street. It was the kind of room that had been important once and had aged without updating. Dark wood table, green leather chairs, framed certificates on the wall from 1987, a wall clock that ticked in the specific way of clocks that have nothing better to do. Gerald Marsh, my father's estate attorney for 27 years, sat at the head of the table. He was 71, thin, with the careful movements of a man who understood that the things he held in rooms like this one had weight and moved accordingly. Linda arrived first and sat at the opposite end of the table from Gerald, which is where she was going to end up regardless. She had Cora with her, 19, dark-haired, with the look of a young woman who has been told a specific version of events and has no reason yet to question it. Linda had a leather portfolio open in front of her, a legal pad, and a pen. Prepared, thorough, as always. Mitchell Crane arrived 30 seconds after me. 44 years old, dark suit, briefcase with brass clasps. He set the briefcase on the floor beside his chair and didn't open it yet, which I noticed Linda notice. "Who is this?" she asked, looking at Mitchell. "My attorney," I said. "Why do you need an attorney?" I looked at her steadily. "Because I'm also a beneficiary." Her smile was practiced and thin. "Paige, the will is very simple. There's no reason for drama." Gerald Marsh cleared his throat, the gentle, professional throat clearing of a man who has managed many rooms like this one and has learned that the most effective intervention is usually to begin. He read the will slowly. Linda received the house, $380,000 in assessed value, paid off clean. Cora received $20,000 outright. 2 smaller bequests to charitable organizations my father had supported for years. Linda's pen moved on her legal pad. She was tallying something. Her shoulders had the set of someone who has received what they expected and is already thinking about next steps. Then Gerald set the first document aside and picked up a second folder. "However," he said, "over approximately 18 years, Douglas Irving executed a series of legal asset transfers. These transfers were completed in accordance with applicable property and estate law, properly filed and notarized, and are not part of the probate estate. They are therefore not subject to distribution under the terms of this will." Linda's pen stopped moving. "To whom were these assets transferred?" Her voice was still even, the control voice, the company voice. Gerald looked at me. "To his daughter, Paige Irving." The room went quiet in the specific way rooms go quiet when something structural shifts. Mitchell opened his briefcase. 2 clicks of the brass clasps, loud in the silence. He removed 3 folders, color-coded, tabbed, the product of 30 years of institutional habit, and placed them in front of him. Then he reached back into the briefcase and removed a 4th document, a single-bound report, and placed it in the center of the table. "Independent asset valuation, certified, dated 2 weeks before my father's death. Total value of assets held under the name Paige Irving as of Douglas Irving's date of death," Mitchell said. He let the room go completely still. "Approximately $28 million. Cora's mouth opened. Linda's hand went to the edge of the table. Her knuckles changed color. I watched her face move through something. Disbelief first, then calculation, then a sharp-cornered anger that she couldn't fully contain the way she usually could. "You stole it." Her voice had dropped below the control register, something rawer underneath. "You sat in my house every Wednesday and you knew this whole time." I looked at her. I had sat in that house every Wednesday for 6 years. Wednesday dinners, my father's standing invitation, the one thing Linda couldn't reasonably object to without making explicit what she'd always managed to keep implicit. I had sat at that table and listened to Linda talk about the neighborhood association and Cora's school events and the household budget while my father ate quietly and asked me afterward, walking me to my car, how work was going. I had known. "You changed the locks 4 hours after my father died," I said. "You want to talk about what I knew?" Her jaw tightened. Mitchell reached into the briefcase one final time. A single sheet of paper. He placed it in the center of the table, face up, where everyone at the table could read it. Clean white paper. A transaction summary, printed from bank records, with a line highlighted in yellow. "There is one additional matter," he said. 9 days after Douglas Irving's death, a withdrawal of $80,000 was made from the joint savings account held by Douglas and Linda Irving. This withdrawal was executed using a durable financial power of attorney, signed by Douglas Irving in 2021. He paused. "Under Ohio law, a durable power of attorney for financial matters terminates automatically upon the death of the principal. Douglas Irving died at 7:14 a.m. on March 14th. The withdrawal was executed at 3:47 p.m. on March 15th, 32 hours after the power of attorney legally ceased to exist." The dentist's drill started up through the floor below, a high whine that cut through the silence like it was looking for something to do. "The funeral cost $8,214, Mitchell continued. "That leaves $71,186 unaccounted for. I've submitted a request for the complete transaction records to First Federal Bank and have been in contact with Detective Carol Avery of the Columbus Financial Crimes Unit, who has indicated preliminary interest in reviewing the documentation." Detective Carol Avery, 14 years in financial crimes. I'd spoken to her on Wednesday afternoon for 45 minutes, and she had asked very good questions and had the voice of someone who had heard a lot of stories and knew the difference between the ones that were true. Linda sat down, not deliberately, like someone had removed the structural support. She sat down in the green leather chair at the end of the dark wood table, and she put her hand on the table, and for the first time in 22 years of watching her control every room she walked into, every kitchen, every hallway, hallway, every holiday dinner, every conversation where she'd managed the temperature and the narrative and the outcome. She had nothing. No spreadsheet for this, no column for it. No way to track it or manage it or make it come out the way she'd planned. Cora looked at her mother, then looked at me, then looked at the table in front of her with the expression of a 19-year-old who has just understood that the version of events she was raised on had a different version underneath it, and that the difference is $28 million and a criminal investigation, and she doesn't know yet what to do with that. I didn't know what to say to Cora. I'm still not sure I do, but she's not Linda. She didn't choose this, and that's a distinction I'm trying to hold on to. Gerald Marsh gathered his documents with the quiet efficiency of a man who has done this many times and understands that his job is to state the facts and let the room do what rooms do. Mitchell closed his briefcase. 2 clicks, reversed. I stood up. The building was 11 blocks from the conference room. I walked because it wasn't raining and I needed the air, and because my father had always said, you understand a piece of property better on foot than from a car. It was a 6-floor commercial building that had been purchased for $410,000 in 2003, when the neighborhood was the kind of neighborhood that made Linda's risk assessment spreadsheet go red. It was now worth, according to the certified appraisal Mitchell had brought to the table, $3.8 million, 91% occupied, 32 tenants. Kevin Dalton managing the property with the steady competence of someone who takes the work seriously. I had a key in my coat pocket. I let myself into the lobby. It smelled the way commercial buildings smell, slightly institutional, floor cleaner and recirculated air, and the afternoon light came through the front windows at an angle that hit the tile a specific way. The building was built in 1961 and had good bones, which is something my father had told me when he bought it, and which I had confirmed in the 18 years since. I took the elevator to the top floor and stood at the window and looked at the city. My father had stood at this window once, maybe 2 years after he bought the building, and told me that the point of real estate wasn't the buildings. The point was the patience, the willingness to see what something could be before anyone else did, and to hold on to it through the years when it looked like you were wrong. He'd been right about this building. He'd been right about me. I stood at the window for a long time. 6 months later, Detective Carol Avery's investigation into the unauthorized withdrawal resulted in Linda being charged with improper use of a power of attorney under Ohio Revised Code 1337, FARN, a felony in cases involving amounts over $7,500. Her attorney, a man named Philip Dorsey, who had 20 years in criminal defense and was, from what I heard, not optimistic, negotiated a plea arrangement that involved repayment of the $71,786, a suspended sentence, and 2 years of probation. She kept the house, $380,000 in a city where she'd built her social life and her identity and her very organized understanding of what she owned. I have not spoken to her since the will reading. Cora sent me a text 4 months after the reading. It said, I didn't know any of it. I want you to know that. I replied, I know. I'm sorry it happened this way. She replied with a single word. Okay, we haven't texted since, but the door isn't closed. Some doors take time.